Well, good evening, everybody. Greg Pruitt here, and I'm joined by my co-host of the Freedom Bros podcast, Dustin Hurst. Dustin, the Jim Hurst. We got to come up with some fun nicknames, dude.
I've never been a nickname guy, but Freedom Bros is about as far as I will go.
Yeah, no, that's okay. So, yeah, I mean, if you were attacking Trump, you would get a nickname. Might not be the one you want, but you definitely
Usually it's some variation of Derpston or Hurston or Huffston or something. Derpston, yeah, Derpston is usually the one that the liberals call me on Twitter. So I mean, I'm again not a big nickname guy for that very reason.
We do like to give nicknames to other people, in particular Gigi, and
the guy who's obsessed with us and
yes.
can't stop talking about us.
Yeah,
Yes,
he's watching right now. You know it.
Greasy as
All
hell.
right. Well, with that, right before that, we're going to be interviewing a presidential candidate for 2024.
We've made it big time, Greg. We're already here. Five episodes in, and we're already pulling the big dogs. Let's go.
Right. That's right. So stay tuned for that. In the meantime, let's roll our freaking awesome intro, dude. I still love this intro.
Absolute overkill, and I love every second of it. It's way too much. It's great.
You might have to add some dumbbell and gun sounds or something just to go even, turn it up to 11, baby.
Yeah, let's go. So the guest tonight, Greg, our first guest, well, we're only having one, so I guess he is the first and the last guest. Mike Termott is a Libertarian candidate for president. He reached out to me earlier this week, or his staff did, and they said, hey, we want to talk to you about my run for president. And I was like, sure, why not? I'm a registered Libertarian and Greg's a constitutionalist. There are no Republicans in the room. Let's have this conversation. So we're going to go for about 30 minutes with Mike, and then we're going to talk about the craziness in Idaho. Mike, welcome to the show. It is so good to have you here.
Oh my goodness, it's my joy to be with you all. And I cannot believe that it's actually true that you guys don't have raucous nicknames. Dustin, you are begging to be called the Big Hurst. I mean, that is on point. I mean, I don't know if you're a baseball or a Frank Thomas fan. Frank played out in Oakland for a while.
Yeah.
I grew up outside of Chicago, so I was always a Cubs fan, but I recognized that the White Sox had something special in the Big Hurt. So I think you've got to go with the Big Hurst.
Normally I go with my Twitter handle for the longest time was the Truth Hurst, because I thought that was kind of clever, and then I was like, yeah, maybe not.
No, that's not bad. As a matter of fact, I was thinking about Greg because his last name is getting close to the truth, but I think that he needs to go with the Proof. Greg the Proof.
Greg the Proof. We're going pro wrestling style tonight. I feel like we're good.
I like that. Speaking of which, your opening is not too much. I mean, it's a bit much for anybody else, but it's not too much for you guys. I thought that was awesome.
Yeah, we love it. I love it.
Yeah. Okay, let's get down to business, Mike. You are first of all amazing guest. Come on, like that was the best guest we've had come on and just smash the room. Amazing energy. I love it. You are running for president as a Libertarian. Tell me.
Yeah, someone's got to do it.
Yeah, exactly. Like as a fellow Libertarian, like my first job is to tell you you're not Libertarian enough, because that's all Libertarians ever do to each other. But tell me,
I suppose that's true. I suppose I need to say it to you too, unless we agree on everything, which would really suck. So let's go.
I promise you, we will not. Okay. Tell me why you're running for president, what your issues are. Tell me about your platform. Let's get into the details. Let's go.
Sure. How fast do I need to talk? Look, I'm in the race because I think that I can help push the Libertarian Party in the direction I believe it needs to go as far as this process is run. And by that, I mean, I think we need to run a campaign that is policy forward, that is completely adherent to our principles, and most importantly, that differentiates us completely from the Democratic and Republican parties. I think that this is a mistake that we have made in past cycles by not differentiating sufficiently. And that mistake we've made in a couple of different ways. One is that we were not out there cleaving a hard edge against Democrats and a hard edge against Republicans. You guys look like you may be a tad young to go back to 2012 and 16, but Gary Johnson, who I really like, by the way, nice guy, seems like a libertarian guy, smart guy, had a career in public service. It's all good. I don't mean anything personal, right? But as a strategic matter, I don't think you want to go out there and say, let's see if I get this right. Sometimes I screw it up. His big saying was, I'm fiscally conservative like a Republican and socially liberal like a Democrat.
Right.
And the problem, of course, is there's two problems. One is that as a strategic matter, you haven't sufficiently differentiated yourselves from the other parties. And this we really need to do. I believe that most Americans have a libertarian streak, a libertarian leaning, an appreciation for the Constitution, for example. And Greg, I appreciate you as a constitutionalist. I think that's fantastic. When I say bless your heart, I don't mean it in a Southern way. I mean,
oh boy.
Bless your heart. Thanks for doing it. I really believe that we need to fight our way back to the Constitution. And it's an obligation for those of us who believe in a delimited powers form of government to lead that charge. So anyway, I do believe that you have to, as a strategic matter, differentiate yourself from the other parties so that people can find you.
Sure.
So that people who are of a libertarian streak, and I believe it's most Americans, can find that flag if you stake it and raise it high enough. And the other matter, and this is going to sound possibly glib, but I don't mean it as a completely silly thing. When you say that to people, objectively speaking, I think you're lying to them. I don't think Republicans are fiscally conservative. Certainly they haven't been for at least a generation, right? Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
100%.
Back in the day, I grew up a bit of a Republican in the 80s and into some of the 90s. I was, a fiscally conservative banker and then economist. And I believe that the Republican Party could make a contribution toward fiscal conservatism. And I was wrong. I was wrong. And disappointedly so. When someone in your family hurts your feelings, it's worse than if some schmuck on the street does, right? And so there's a disappointment there. There's a disappointment there because, I thought there was some value in the Republican Party and maybe there had been in years gone by, but it certainly wasn't there by the time the 90s came along. And the other side of that is that when you say that we're socially liberal like Democrats, I don't believe in a real fundamental way Democrats are socially liberal anymore. Consider the difference between the way that we as libertarians operate and the way that the Democrats operate. It's funny. We didn't even get more than 2 minutes into this, and you already told me we're probably going to disagree about some things, right? And I respect that all day long, and you're probably right. I mean, I don't know. You're probably right. Democrats aren't that way. No. They force each other to believe all the same things. Otherwise, they're going to ostracize. They're going to cancel you, right?
Yes.
That's not what we mean by social liberalism. That's just some weird sense of we used to be socially liberal. This is what we believe. And now we're going to run the Gestapo and you're all going to believe the way we do. And you're going to articulate it exactly the way we do also. That's not what we mean. That's not the libertarian. The libertarian way is we punch each other in the face. We go have beers, right?
100%.
You wouldn't expect, there is no way a Democrat is going on a Democratic podcast and the host comes out and says, I'm glad you're here. We're probably going to disagree about a few things. No, that's not the way they do things, right? We're like, oh, I'm so glad you're here because, you feel the way I do, and we need to convince the rest of the American people to listen to our message because it's the only one that makes sense. That's their shtick.
Yes. So I want to ask you, and you kind of touched on this a little bit, but as I've been following libertarian politics and presidential politics, which I'm trying to wean myself off of because it doesn't matter in the sense that, like, I can't have a ton of influence over the presidential campaign. I just can't.
It will drive you crazy.
Exactly. Yeah. But I keep reading these thought pieces, these think pieces by DC and New York elites. They're like, hey, is America ready for a libertarian moment? Is it time? And we heard that with Gary Johnson and with Joe Jorgensen and with Justin Mosh, going libertarian, being the first libertarian in Congress. What's stopping us from having a libertarian moment? What you say that people have a libertarian streak. Okay. Why is that not translating into electoral victories and more progress in the libertarian movement and with the party?
Yeah. Look, I think I have the answer, but I need to caution you. If I say things like, this is how the world works, I figured it all out, I'm really smart, take everything I say with a grain of salt, okay? It is complicated, and sometimes I accidentally oversimplify things. So feel free to say,
sure,
Mike, that probably sounds right, but on some level, you're probably full of shit, okay? That's all right. But here's my take on it, and I'll be as candid with you as I possibly can. My take on it is that the opportunity we have this cycle is not completely different from past cycles, but is arguably greater. And that's for a couple different reasons. One is that the parties, the Republican Party, the Democratic Party, the other major parties, their leadership has stunk for some time. But objectively speaking, I think you would have to agree that it's worse now than even ever before. However you feel about, for example, Donald Trump and Joe Biden, of whom I have no patience, but I know they're your favorite. If you scoot the camera over, I know you got a poster of like Hillary and Joe over there. Right? Is that
you watch your damn mouth? All right.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised, and I know Greg's got some Trump poster going on over there. However you feel about these people, objectively speaking, their poll numbers stink, right? Yep. Democrats themselves are unhappy with President Biden. Republicans largely are no longer all that supportive of Donald Trump. He's obviously got more support than anybody else, right? He's crushing the competition. Yep. If you were to look at it from today's point of view, you'd have to say it's very likely he'll be the nominee again. And yet a tremendous proportion of the party doesn't like him, which is a weird thing.
Right.
So for this reason, there's an opportunity there, just politically, just tactically, there's an opportunity. But philosophically, there's also an opportunity. And I think that's for a couple different reasons. One is there's a growing sense of authoritarianism.
Oh, yeah.
Which is evil as it is, it plays into our wheelhouse. If we can just convince people that we are the anti-authoritarians, right? Authoritarianism, remember where it comes from. In a democracy, it comes from a politician's ability to convince the electorate that what you really have to fear is not your loss of civil liberties. What you really have to fear is that other schmuck coming to power, right? Yep. And therefore, I need more power to protect you from the other idiot.
Yeah.
And the two parties going at it as they have now for 30 or 40 years, I mean, you might date it back to, for example, the advent of cable news where everyone started getting their news from two different sources, right? That was a big turning point in the sense that people no longer even get their news from the same place.
Yeah.
So we quite literally no longer have common ground with people from the other side of the aisle, even a common fact base, even a common length, even a way to talk about these issues. And so we become polarized for all kinds of sociological reasons. And so these parties have gone at it. You have to say that the number one objective of a Democrat is to keep a Republican out of power. And vice versa. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. 100%.
So think about it. To the extent to which you were a 1968 Democrat or 1972 Democrat, and you had an anti-war streak, the Democratic Party has left you. The Democratic Party doesn't really represent in any significant sense a moderation in terms of the war machine. I think most people would say that Hillary was more, for example, Hillary was more of a war hawk than Donald Trump was when they were running against each other.
Yeah.
just as an example, right?
Sure.
And if you were a Republican back in say the 80s, and you were a fiscal conservative, the Republican Party has left you.
Yep.
And so to the extent to which people either look to a particular leader, they're going to be disappointed. If they look to a particular philosophy inside of these parties, they're going to be disappointed. And if they're looking for a traditional constitutional way of governance, they're going to be disappointed at the growing authoritarianism. I think most people in America are recognizing that a lot of our problems now come from bad public policy.
Yeah.
You look at the wars, you look at inflation, you look at the debt, right? All these things are driven by bad decisions made by policymakers.
So let's get into policy. So this just happens to be the anniversary week of Killdozer, right? So let's celebrate Killdozer for a second. Let's say that I have Greg just left, so I'm Freedom Bro again. So let's just say,
how are we going to operate without the proof? Dude,
I don't know. Well, all the other parties do, so we're fine. Let's just say for a second, somehow magically you win the presidential election and you get sworn in. For me, it'd be Killdozer on the government. Like I'd destroy everything. Like I would blow up everything. What's your move? What agencies do you destroy? I mean, how do you deal with budgets? Because I think it's all about the Overton window and what people are willing to accept, right? It's like, I would like to blow up everything, but I don't know that the American public is ready for that. Like, what's your move when you get into office? How are you actually going to limit government and create more of a libertarian society and libertarian government?
Yeah, I'm not going to dodge this. I want to take it head on, but I'm going to tell you up front that there's a subtlety that needs to be articulated. You need to tell people during the campaign the long run objective so they know what your principles are.
Right.
Okay. So yeah, we need to get back to constitutionalism and a delimited government, and that means over time we want to get rid of the Federal Reserve System. We want to break up the FBI into pieces and get rid of it. We want to end the relationship between individuals and the federal government that is represented by the IRS, that direct taxation thing. We want to get rid of that. We want to sunset the vast majority of federal regulatory agencies. We're not a fan of states picking those up, but at the very least, we want to decentralize the power out to the states so that they can make that decision on their own. This is where we're going. You want to signal that during the campaign so that people know what the principles are and where we're going. Now, having said that, you asked to fast forward until January 21. I know Inauguration Day is January 20, but the three of us are getting drunk that day. So let's
I don't know about Greg. He's a good person.
He's our driver. Okay, he's our driver.
Yeah, I'll be the driver. There you go.
Okay. So the 21st, on the 21st, you have to start putting things in place that are going to allow you to make those things happen. And in Washington, you can't get rid of a department. You can't even get rid of actually even a function, much less an entire agency, unless and until you make it as irrelevant as possible. What you have to do is you have to shrink its political power base.
Right.
So, for example, you have to replace the head of the FBI with someone with a libertarian framework that acknowledges that the federal government really doesn't have anything but a silly idea of being in law enforcement. There's just no reason.
So what you're saying is Ammon Bundy is going to be the head of the FBI under your yes. I love this. Let's go.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I don't know how we're going to slide that past the Senate Confirmation Committee. That might be our challenge. But save for that, that's a good idea.
Amazing.
Yeah, I'm not sure we want to tie ourselves all, that first week. I mean, we're already to Wednesday. We're going to be working all week at managing the Senate confirmation hearings now. But The point is, you need at least libertarian-minded. It could be a lowercase L, but at least small government-minded individuals to head up some of these agencies to shrink down some of their functionalities before you can move legislation, say 2 years later, that would go at getting rid of either entireties of agencies or at least major pieces of them. The Federal Reserve is an interesting example because I spend a lot of time talking about how to end the Fed. And there you've got to recognize that the Fed, for example, is comprised of 3 or 4 really important pieces that you need to attack separately. The monetary policy, for example, you've got to get rid of their discretion over monetary policy and replace it with a rules-based system. And to make that happen, you've got to replace the leadership, which is not so easy because they got terms that don't expire every 5 minutes. They got terms that go on for a long time. But you've got to replace it with Federal Reserve governors who are like-minded economists, and they're out there. There are plenty of them out there. It's just the Republicans and Democrats don't like to appoint them. And then people will get comfortable seeing that a rules-based system, a rule that, for example, says we're only going to allow money stock to grow by 2% a year. This is the Milton Friedman idea from the 1970s. Mm-hmm. And replace there's discretion that contributes to the boom-bust cycle and contributes to long-run inflation.
Right.
People will get comfortable with the idea that a rules-based system can work and work well. And then you can move legislation that completely gets rid of the Fed control of monetary policy. You transfer the balance sheet to the Treasury Department. You make the regulatory apparatus completely optional for banks, and then you can move legislation to completely get rid of the Fed. But it has to be done in a piecemeal fashion, and it might take several years, right? But you let people know in advance, this is what we're shooting for. You don't want to somehow say, well, I'm really only for tinkering around the edges.
Right.
Because what happens invariably is that people will accept that as your starting point for negotiation, and they won't appreciate the principle of what's behind this. It comes off as, well, I'm mad at the FBI. No, I'm not mad at the FBI. I recognize that the FBI is an institutional matter. It doesn't matter who's the head of it. It's got nothing to do with the individuals. I mean, it's been 75 years. The individuals come and go, and it's been a political shit show from the start, right?
Yeah.
So it's an institutional matter. It's the framework that guides it. It's got to be broken up into pieces.
So,
and in that sense, go ahead.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt there.
No,
so,
please.
I mean, a lot of what you're talking about so far is kind of, day one, you're elected, and here's kind of your vision for how you would run as president. I guess for me, especially, I'm the state vice chair of the Constitution Party, right? And so I know all about how the third parties and the difficulties that they face. It's the path forward. Even for somebody like Ron DeSantis, it's like, okay, what's your path forward to getting to the presidency? Because it's going to come down to some really big issues. And having talked to and interviewed previously, not on this podcast, but on another thing, the Libertarian chairman, for instance, the old chairman here, you're in Idaho, and there are 2 massive issues that sink or float a candidate here, and that's guns and babies. We probably have a lot of agreement on guns. We can get into that in a minute, but the life issue here is huge, right? And it's huge in a ton of states, and the life battle, to your point of the polarization of our country, one side is like, no, we're done with abortion, stop killing babies. And the other side is, well, if it's accidentally born, go ahead and kill it anyway. Right. I mean, so we have gone completely opposite now. And the Libertarian,
I'm glad we know where Greg stands on this. I hate a guy that won't reveal it up front. Right. I love it when he lets us know.
Yeah, no, I don't. Those two, again, for me, those 2 issues are huge. And so I guess, a lot of libertarians here in Idaho will say, well, I'm pro-life personally, but keep the government out of it. And we've kind of got to this awkward position where the Democrats used to be safe, legal, and rare. They didn't really push for it, and now it's just kill all the babies. And so that has really moved a lot of us pro-life people into.
No, I get it. Believe me, I was raised by a Lutheran and a Calvinist. Okay. So you can probably figure out how my family feels about this.
Right.
But as a libertarian, I do believe that how I feel about this has to be irrelevant. Right? I do believe that we cannot impose our social values on public policy. And that applies to any number of areas. Now, having said that, and by the way, yeah, you and I agree on the Second Amendment, unless there's something wrong with you that I don't think is, okay? I think we're totally in agreement on the Second Amendment.
Look, Greg tried to buy a tank last year.
Exactly. And good for him. The problem is they need too much oil. The one in my backyard is a beast. I'm saying it's expensive to operate. So we're on the same page there. So let's leave that issue behind. The problem with the abortion issue, in my view, there's two challenges to it, I should say. One is the federalization versus decentralization piece. And there, I think we're going to agree, and I think that that's going to turn out to be the meat and potatoes of the issue. And by that, I mean, as a libertarian, we're very much in favor of decentralization. We will not tolerate the federal government playing a role in this. In that sense, it was correct that Roe v. Wade was shot down. However you feel about abortion, never mind how you feel about it, Roe v. Wade was a bad decision, and shooting it down was the right thing to do. It's important that each state legislate this area for itself. Now, the other issue is, how are they going to legislate it, right? Now, I recognize this is not a presidential issue, but you asked me and we got nothing else to do, so let's talk about it. Each state's going to have to make up its mind, and I personally believe that the American society is not one that's going to allow the line to be drawn at either end of the spectrum. You're not going to get states that say you can't have an abortion no matter what, never, no how, whether it's 1 day or 270 days. Abortion.
I don't know about that. I really don't. I think Idaho's right on the cusp of that.
And bless their heart, okay?
Which bless your heart is that one?
If that reflects the values of your community,
right?
Okay. I also seriously doubt there's going to be a state that draws the line all the way at the other end that says, knock yourself out. Have an abortion whenever you want, an hour before delivery, an hour after delivery. Do whatever you want. It doesn't matter the circumstances. You do you. Okay? I don't think there's going to be a state that goes for that. I think that all 50 are going to end up having to figure out where to draw the line somewhere closer to the middle of that spectrum, wherever you characterize the middle to be. Personally, I'm guessing that over time, and I don't necessarily mean over the next 36 months, but maybe over the next 36 years, I do believe that most will coalesce around the idea that an important marker along the way is viability. I think that if you go before viability to draw that line, you have a real uphill climb to make the argument that a woman's right should be disregarded. Again, leaving my personal values out of it, I just think that argument is an uphill climb. And
I want to challenge you for just 1 second. Like,
Please.
I want to go into social issues for a minute, because I think Greg has hit on something. Like, the left has lost its ever-loving mind. Like, as much as Trump is crazy in his own ways, but like the left, like, to your point, Mike, you said, like, we live in this fact-free world where we don't even know, like, what the truth is anymore. Like, you can be a man. You can be a man if you want to be, or a woman. Like, you can be whatever you want to be. You can be whatever age you want to be. Like, you can be anything. Like, and this is where I abandon my libertarian principles of live and let live for just a minute. So please call me not libertarian enough. But like, I helped work on.
No, you go for it. Let's get it out in the open.
It's easier this way. I worked for a policy group here in Idaho, and we helped pass a ban on allowing kids to transition their gender before the age of 18. They can't take hormone blockers. They can't cut their body parts off. Nothing. They can go to counseling. They can go to the therapy that they so badly need. Is there a role for government in stopping stuff like that, where like these delusions that the left has are hurting kids? And I sat with Chloe Cole. I saw her tears. I felt her regret over cutting off her breasts. and that she will never nurse a kid. Like at some point, there's like an existential reason for us to exist as a government, and it's to keep kids from cutting off their body parts. Like, can you at least get there with me on that?
Yeah, let me offer a way for you and me to agree with a different set of words.
Okay.
And if you like them, they're yours, and if you hate them, you can use them anyway. The way that I look at this is that we don't say that the government has the authority or the government has the right, but a community, the people have the right to come together and make rules about what it is that they're going to criminalize, what they're not going to criminalize. It's very important, and this comes back to the abortion issue too, to recognize the iron law of culture, which is that public policy has to be downstream of culture.
Correct.
When you legislate something, when you criminalize something that the culture is not ready to give up, now you've got a black market.
Right. 100%.
That's dangerous, and that
Right.
you don't want to do. So let's bear that and put a pin in that, as we say. Hold that thought. The other thing is that as a society, we do have the right to decide what we're not going to tolerate as far as compromising other people's individual rights. And for this reason, abortion becomes tricky because we're all arguing about to what extent a fetus has rights and when, right? And when, therefore, the society has an interest in protecting it. In this particular case, I think it's important for us to bear in mind that we have already agreed, and I agree, that we do not tolerate consent to sexuality below a certain age.
Correct.
That a parent cannot sign off below a certain age. That even if a parent agreed, a doctor agreed, a child agreed, we as a society believe that children need to be protected from being sexualized before a certain age.
Are you listening, Target? Are you listening? I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Bud Light.
Well, yeah. Maybe they should. So we believe this to be a worthy set of values. And I do believe it's libertarian in the sense, it's not libertarian in the sense that, we let anything go, but it's libertarian in the sense that if government has any value whatsoever, and we can all argue that it doesn't, but if there is any value left in government, it's to protect our kids. It's to protect those in our society least able to protect themselves, least able to recognize their individual liberties and to stand up for their own rights. If the government can't do that, then it really has no value left whatsoever.
Well, sure. It's proving that that's the case. Greg, we got to wrap up with Mike. Any more questions?
So what I was going to say is,
sorry, go ahead.
That issue that you identified, I put in the same bucket. If you can't sexualize, then you also can't do things that permanently affect your sexuality.
Agree with you.
Okay. I guess before we let him do his plug and pitch to the people, where are you on red flag laws?
There we go. There it is.
Hey, it's an important issue. As an empirical matter, I'm not convinced they work. As a libertarian matter, I'm not sure they're ethical. As a governmental matter, it sends shivers up my spine to think that over time they could progress to a point where they get out of control. So they make me very, very nervous. And I want to hasten to add here that although I'm, for these reasons, against red flag laws, I want to point out that the people who favor them, I think, honestly mean well and are thoughtful people who just disagree. I will give you that. And I wouldn't say that about a lot of communists, for example. Okay? Yeah. I mean, it's worth having the argument. If you come to me with an idea that I think is ethically problematic, that is problematic from a standpoint of principle, we're probably not going to get past that hump.
Sure.
But if you come to me and say it works, okay, we're having a conversation. Let's entertain the conversation, see what's there that does work. Can we implement this in a way that protects individual liberties? We're having a conversation. In this case, we're not having a conversation because it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You see where I'm going?
Yeah.
Like if you come to me and you say gun control, more generally, a ban on AR, as a matter of individual liberty, as a matter of constitutional protections, we're not having it, right?
Yeah.
But if you come to me and you show me it's going to save 500 lives a year, all right, well, now at least you have my ear, right? At least now we're having a conversation. What can we do to harness what's of value there and still protect individual liberties? But the truth is it wouldn't save, in my view, I don't think it would save a single life. So we're not having that conversation.
Okay.
All right, Mike, this is your chance. You've done us a huge favor by coming on and talking with us, and I've really enjoyed this. I thought this was going to be boring and stuffy, and it was not. So thank you for exceeding expectations.
Yeah.
We're going to do a half an hour next year, and we'll make it boring and stuffy to meet your expectations.
Tell our listeners and our viewers where they can learn about you, website, social media, all that stuff. Snapchat.
All right, real quick, you can go to MikeTermott.com. Easy website to remember phonetically, but you'd have to spell it right, which is the big challenge. There are 2 A's in Termott, MikeTermatt, MikeTermott.com. And the benefit of going to MikeTermott.com is not because of all the stuff you're going to read there and you're going to get smart and you're going to share this at cocktail parties and have great beer and more sex. Those things could be true, but the real benefit of going to the website is that my real contact information is there, my real phone number, my real email address. And when you disagree with me on something, you can text me. You could probably even call me, but I probably won't answer because I won't know who the hell that is on the phone number. Text me and I'll call you back. Email me. It's Mike@MikeTermott.com. And say, hey, I saw you on that podcast show and that Greg sure is good looking, but you said something really stupid and now I'm mad. So we can have that talk. And then the other website is goldnewdeal.org. The Gold New Deal is our platform. It's a collection of the most transformative ideas, very edgy, very principled policy platform. It's important, I believe. It's so important, it's got its own name and its own website, goldnewdeal.org. How many politicians do you know get a completely different website for their platform?
You need a marketing team. No, I'm just kidding. All right.
So go to goldnewdeal.org.
Very good. Mike, thank you so much for joining us. Good
thanks
luck
for
in the
coming on.
campaign. And
Thank you.
Best of luck.
I appreciate that. You guys are a lot of fun. Thanks for having me. We'll talk later.
Yeah, you too.
Thanks,
Take
buddy.
care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right.
Okay,
Oh,
so before anybody gets pissy with us, we are willing to have any presidential candidate that wants to come on our show. I know that there are some that are like, ew, libertarians. Like, I will take, if Joe Biden wants to come on my show, or the Communist Party's Gavin Newsom wants to come on, like, I'll take him. Donald Trump, Ron DeSantis, pick up that phone, shoot me a text. We'll take you. Before we move on to the Idaho stuff, Greg, what's your take on him?
Yeah, again, very vibrant and a lot of fun. And like you said, so often, especially with these presidential candidates, it gets really stuffy and boring. And they're trying to talk to you like it's like, they're on CBS News or some crap. So, Mike was a lot of fun. And again, for me, it's with the libertarian issue in Idaho, especially, and we didn't even get into the whole drug thing.
Right.
Drugs and the life issue tend to be the hardest thing for libertarians to pull some of the, disavowed and disenfranchised Republicans into their camp. Or the Constitution Party, we don't necessarily have that same issue, that same problem. Overall, a lot of fun, and it'll be interesting to see what his path forward is in trying to pick up delegates and all that stuff as we get further along in the race. So
yeah, I like his approach. He's very witty, very interesting. Like I said, with libertarians, it's either hit or miss. They're like super cool or they're huge dorks, and I'm not sure where I'm at on that spectrum. Probably huge dork, but I like the guy. I like the guy a lot, and I just went and followed him on Twitter and stuff. And so, thanks again for coming on, Mike. I think he's still in our waiting room watching us, but Mike, thank you for coming on. Okay, let's move on to Idaho stuff because like we are 11 months out from the election and things are already getting a little bonkers. So let's talk. This is sort of election related, but not. Let's talk about the Senate Republicans and what they did this week. And it was set off by one Facebook post. That's it. Like, yeah. So do you want to do it or do you want me to do it, Greg?
Well, you can lead it in. I'm going to pull it up because I'm kind of curious on some stuff.
Goodness.
So go ahead.
So the Senate Republicans, they are all about, like, the Senate. If you're an observer of Idaho politics, you know that the Senate is all about tradition, about cordiality, about decorum to your face and in front of the cameras. Behind the scenes, they're as ruthless as they say conservatives are, right? We know this because Christy Zito was in the Senate last year or 2 years ago, whenever she was in the Senate. And she bucked leadership all the time, and they let her know about it. They pulled her into offices and read her the riot act on the regular. And what you're seeing now, a single Facebook post shows, and you're going to say, well, you're reading too much into it. We're not. I promise you we're not, because we've seen this, and this is just another piece of evidence. There was a new Facebook post put out by the Senate Republican Caucus. I don't know what the page is. Greg, what's the actual page title so I don't mislead people?
No, it's Idaho Senate Republicans. I'm on it.
Idaho Senate Republicans.
Yeah.
So they put out this post celebrating women in their caucus. That's great. I like women. I like women a lot. You actually need them for the furtherization of our civilization. They're great. Women are fantastic and should be in all positions of power. Yeah, there. I said my diversity stuff. My ESG score just went up.
Just went up a 10.
But they highlighted, instead of highlighting all of the women in the Senate GOP caucus, they highlighted the rhino women in the Senate GOP caucus. They highlighted Lori Likely. Oh, no. Sorry, she's not in there anymore. Abby Lee, Linda Hartgen, and who's the third one?
Lori Den Hartog.
Lori Den Hartog, who's like a C- on the Freedom Index. 3 people who are not all that conservative. But gee, that must be all the women in the Senate Republican caucus. Nope. Go pull it up. Legislature.idaho.gov. They forgot Cindy Carlson, Glenita Zuderveld, and Tammy Nichols. Gee, Greg, can you tell me what those 3 have in common? Can you just tell me? Do they have bad body odor or something? What's going on there?
Well, they're bad because they don't kowtow to the leadership. So that's exactly. So I was trying to look up real quick. Is there any other? I'm trying to see how many women. So there's 11 women in the Senate, and I know some of those are.
I mean, you've got Winthrop and
Democrats.
There's. Let's see, Winthrop.
Oh, what the heck is the other gal's name?
Man, up real quick. I don't want to mislead people.
Allie.
Robbie.
How do you say Robbie? Robbie? Is it Robbie?
Robbie, yeah.
Oh, and
I'm gonna pull it up real quick.
You got Semaroth,
and
Morty King. So that's 4.
Yeah.
And then Winthrop. So wait, hold on. So that would be 5 Democrat women. So that means 6 Republican women, 3, the 3 rhinos they highlighted, and the other 3 they left off.
Now it's funny. So what they're going to do, I actually emailed Kelly Anthon about this because I thought it was stupid and I don't like Kelly Anthon. What they're going to do is they're going to say, oh, we have a social media company. I think it's a company out of New York and London. It's very weird. And I think they have a Boise office. They screwed up. They didn't do everything, or they're already backpedaling on the comment section. They're saying, oh, we're going to highlight the other women later. We're going to do that.
Yeah.
I saw that too.
I wasn't sure you saw that. I saw they're already doing a little bit of damage control. Oh, it says we'll be highlighting our other members over the summer. So please tune in. They were not going to do that if if their page didn't get just absolutely blown up with negative comments.
Because as a PR professional, like I've done comms for a long time, if you're going to do that, if it's going to be a series, you make a note of that in the original post.
Correct.
So stuff like this does not happen. But it's interesting.
Yeah.
If they were really going to do that, why is it that the 3 rhino women are the first 3 featured? What are the odds that they just happened to choose the 3 rhinos and left out Tammy Nichols?
Why not mix it up?
Yeah, why didn't Tammy Nichols get included or Cindy Carlson or Glenita? You know why. Because Kelly Anthony didn't want them featured. That's why.
Yeah.
This is just a symptom of what's really going on in the Senate. They don't like conservatives. They don't want to highlight them. They don't want to. In fact, this is like we talked about this with Christy Zitto. Last year, she tried to amend their blessed tax bill to add in more tax relief so we could repeal the grocery tax. Do you remember what happened there?
Yeah. Well,
you remember?
Yeah. Well, I mean, Christy's been getting smacked by those guys for years now, but I mean, they attacked her publicly and shamed her and did everything they could to put her down. Like anyway. Kelly Anthony actually like closed floor debate and adjourned and stuff, and then they took her into the office, and then their media machine, probably the same group, put out a press release saying Christy Zitto tried to sabotage the tax relief. Yeah.
In a good way. Yeah. Like it's like saying like, here's a birthday cake. Christy's adding sprinkles, but she tried to sabotage the cake. Like, what the hell is that? Are you kidding me?
Yeah. And see, I guess to your point, the frustrating thing about Idaho politics, and it's probably like this in every state, I assume, but these rhinos will get up there on the floor in person talking to you, all the stuff, and talk about decorum and respect and leadership and it's all a bunch of crap. Like there's none of that there unless you are kissing their rings and worshiping them. That's not the way that it works, because they will backstab you. They'll steal your ideas. They'll steal your bills. They'll do anything they can to destroy conservatives. And so it's all hypocritical. Anyway.
Yeah. This is nothing new. I love, even though it's just one simple Facebook post, I love showing what's really going on and that there's more cancer and rot within that caucus than people will understand, because you're not going to hear it from Brian Holmes or anybody else. But the truth is they're not being honest with you at all. It's amazing to see.
And Andy Roth talked about that. He said it's worse in the state capitals than it is in Washington, D.C. It's way worse.
That's right. Episode 4
people
is
are
what
paying
Greg's
attention.
talking about. Episode 4, go listen to it. But yes, that's right. Fewer people are paying attention, and so they can get away with more, right? Yeah. If you didn't have the Freedom Bros podcast, you wouldn't know how corrupt our Senate is. So make sure to tune in every week.
That's right.
Okay. Let's move on from that for a minute. The story of the week, of course, here in Idaho was Travis Lohr up in North Idaho. Goodness gracious. I talked to the kid, and I talked to him for just a minute, and he seems like a nice kid, and high school kids are going to go off script. That's just what they're going to do, right?
Yeah.
The district. So for those of you who you might have to be under a rock or whatever, if you missed the story. So Travis Lohr, instead of doing yearbook quotes, the seniors got up during some sort of pride ceremony, which is weird in and of itself, and he said, boys are boys, girls are girls, and you can't change them, or that's just how it is, or something like that. Yeah. And the whole freaking district lost its freaking mind. What did you think of their reaction to the whole thing, Greg?
I guess, you kind of hoped that in Idaho this wouldn't be as big, or maybe Boise, in some of the school districts in Boise, you see some of that meltdown. But for something that simple, I just think of Matt Walsh. I'm like, this kid should be on Matt Walsh's "What is a Woman" documentary, because he answered the question right. And for him to have that happen in Idaho, I know it's Kellogg, it's not exactly the conservative bastion, but not where I had expected something that simple. It, and if that's all he said, it wasn't like you're a mother effing boy and you're a mother effing girl, and you know, I
Right.
mean, then okay, I can get it if you went really vulgar or something, but boys are boys and girls are. I mean, Mr. Rogers could have gone up there and he would have got banned from the freaking Kellogg School District because
Well, but think
he
about
said
it this way
so.
too. Like, and a couple of people brought this up, and we always play this whataboutism game with
Sure.
what could have happened. But so let's play it anyway. I don't love it, but it is a thing. Imagine if he had gone up there and said Black Lives Matter or Trans Lives Matter.
Yeah,
You wouldn't know about it. You wouldn't know about it because everybody would have just swallowed it and said nothing, even though people objected to it. Or, I don't believe that. I believe that trans lives matters in that they're sons and daughters of God, but I don't believe in the trans agenda at all in any way, shape, or form. So the only reason this blew up is because he said something that offended a victimized community. For those listening to audio, I'm making the air quotes. They're not victimized in any way, shape, or form. It's bullcrap. And then to make matters worse, so they canceled graduation. A bus driver who was off duty went to the protest the next day, and the district fired him for going to the protest.
Yeah, I think that's a lawsuit waiting to happen. Unless I don't know where the protest. If it was on the school grounds, then maybe they have some sort of recourse for that. But if they just fired him, that's. I mean, you can get fired for any reason, but there are some reasons you can't do it. And somebody exercising their First Amendment rights, as far as I know, would fall under exceptions to the right to work.
I don't know if you've paid attention to your local community, Greg, but I always see buses around Boise with help wanted bus drivers, they're driving around to find bus drivers. I didn't know that Kellogg, a small community, actually had a dearth of bus drivers and could fire people like that for nothing. But I think that this was instructive in that a lot of people think, like you said, that this is Idaho, and we have this idea that we're a ruby red state. We have Republicans in charge. Our taxes are somewhat low. This stuff can't happen here. It'll happen in Denver, Portland, San Francisco. Yeah, it's happening there. But I promise you, more than you think is happening here. And this just illustrates that 100%. 100%.
Yeah, no, I mean, this should be, I think, a big wake-up call. And to your point, it's much deeper than just this kid saying something at the assembly. It turns out that the teachers and all sorts of people that work within the district are married or dating and all this stuff with people outside the district who are making decisions and overseeing stuff. I think the sheriff, if I remember correctly, is dating or married to one of the teachers, and and is a lesbian couple. Okay, so they're more on the pride. I guess you could say the pride spectrum. That's the thing.
The pride spectrum. Oh no.
I guess, so it's just all these huge conflicts and on top, I mean, so this kid, and I think he lost a job offer now because of that. And I know the IFF and some other folks have been trying to help the kid out and get him somewhere. But yeah, I just, dude, I don't know where we stop. Mike, the Libertarian candidate, he's talking about the polar opposites. We are moving so far apart on every single issue. I don't see how we ever bridge this gap.
There's no bridging it. But here's what I would say on this thing. A lot of people, when these things happen, I've seen these things happen through the last 15 years as I've been doing this. There's the initial shock. It's like, oh my gosh, we made Fox News. We made, this, and then we drop this story.
Sure.
Idaho, do not drop this story because a lot of pieces went wrong. A lot of things went wrong. You got to figure out what happened so that it doesn't happen again. So, for example, let's look at this. First of all, the Idaho Tribune did a great job of digging into the people involved. One of the teachers, the one that they think complained, and we'll get into that for a second, has a pride flag in her room. Why is a pride flag allowed in a classroom? Why is that? That is left-wing propaganda. Imagine if I think there's a Christian flag, right? It's the white one with their blue and red, the blue and red cross or whatever. Why would you allow a Christian flag in a classroom? No, you wouldn't. So there's an issue. Number two, nobody knows who actually was offended. And I think there's a difference. Was it a kid or was it a teacher who might have had a pride flag in her classroom? I want to know that. And I hope I told Brian from IFF to dig into that. The final piece that really disturbed me was the authoritarian sentiment of the district. It was, this kid stepped out of line. We're going to punish everybody for it, right? They canceled graduation. They eventually had it, but they canceled graduation temporarily because what did the sheriff say? There are outside groups who are going to come, and these outside groups are known for violence. Who? Name them.
Yeah.
If you're listening to this and you can do a public records request if you're breathing and can write some words, somebody needs to figure out who they said, because my hunch is that they were lying to you to create a narrative that right-wingers and these bigots are violent, evil, awful people.
Yeah.
Idaho, you can't let this one go. You've got to dig into this and figure out what went wrong. Why did the district fire the guy? Like, are they okay firing people for speech rights? Like, there's another issue. Like, can't let this go. It's too important, guys.
Yeah, I think, I guess getting back to the whole Bud Light thing, honestly, but I mean, that's shown one of the most effective boycotts I've ever seen against a major corporation. I mean, just devastating to them. And that's driven by conservatives. And we normally suck at that kind of stuff. And so I guess what I'm saying is we have to keep that tenacity in holding the school district and Kellogg accountable. That same type of tenacity, you can't let go. Like you said, once that shock value wears off, and Fox News and Newsmax and Daily Wire and all these people are gone, and they don't care about the story anymore, that's when the people up in North Idaho have to stay on it, or local outlets like Idaho Dispatch or Idaho Tribune have to stay on that stuff and keep digging into it.
And I would say to the people of Kellogg, I mean, there were like 5 people up there. If your school board is reelected, you just need to go to Canada or move to California. Like, you're a lost cause.
Go to Canada. They're really close.
Yeah. This is the easiest thing in the entire world to do. Like, all you have to do is say, no, we don't like censorship. We don't support the woke agenda. The 5 on our board, or however many they have on the board, need to go. The district absolutely botched this. The sheriff, if the sheriff doesn't come clean about who the violent group was, the sheriff needs to be fired or, recalled, whatever needs. Like, absolutely, you're right. Keep the tenacity that you used with a private organization and apply it to government, and you'll see some results. Otherwise, we're going to keep getting what we've always gotten, and we're going to see more of this. We're going to see, I guarantee you, we're going to see more of this. Yeah,
definitely.
Oh, Greg, we've got 11 months to the election, and things are already...
I know we're not going to get into it tonight, but man, the whole Republican primary, dude, with Trump and DeSantis, like, kill me now. It's freaking, I can't stand it. Well, I mean, to be honest with you, I can't stand either side. Like, once you pull yourself out of that matrix and you don't care, you're just kind of like, this is stupid. It becomes a cult following for all of these presidential candidates, and it's just lies and deceptions and half-truths, and they all do it to each other. And I just focus on local politics. But
it's interesting to me because I do remember 2008 with the run of Barack Obama, and I remember that conservatives were very concerned with the cult of personality, which is that Obama mattered more than the country, right? We were all offended when Fox News put up a story about him calling his plane Force One, and he had the Obama youth or whatever. And it's like, wait a second, like, both candidates, all the candidates except for Joe Biden, who's eating pudding somewhere, like, all of them have adopted the cult of personality type campaign. And like, I'll admit I'm a homer for Ron DeSantis, but like, I'm probably guilty of this, right? It's not good. It's not good at all. And to your point, like, it's getting ugly, and we're 8 months away from the first votes. Like, we've got a long way to go. It's gonna get nasty.
Yeah, but we're gonna have some fun with it. We're gonna bring on people from all presidential candidates, like Dustin mentioned earlier in the podcast, Libertarian, Constitution Party, whatever the party is, or independents. We don't really care. If you want to come on and talk to Idahoans and talk Idaho politics, we'd be happy to do that. But we'd love to also have, especially with maybe the front runner candidates, have some good debates, especially with the Republicans. Since Dustin and I'm Constitution Party, he's Libertarian. I think we can have some good, open, honest discussions, and where Dustin and I maybe you're a little bit more of a homer for DeSantis at this point. I just don't trust any of them. But I think you can be a little bit more. I think you can be objective too in your questioning and
Yeah.
asking hard questions of any candidate. So I think we can have a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, and the idea of this podcast is not for me to homer and to advance the Ron DeSantis agenda, because, like, again, I understand that at the end of the day, he is a politician and he's going to backstab all of us. And Trump will too, by the way, in case you're thinking that remember who put in more gun control, Trump or Obama? Answer that question and get back to me. But let me get away from that for a second. My goal with this podcast, and Greg's goal, is to educate you so you understand what's really going on. And to that end, here's my cool, slick intro, Greg. To that end, we confirmed that Steve Tanner has declared for the Idaho House of Representatives in District 13. I can't remember the seat, if it's A or B. I think it's Kenny Roten's seat. He has confirmed that he will be on the show next week. Amy Henry has confirmed or has declared for the same seat. I'm going to extend the invite to her. I just haven't made it yet. Whether it's going to be on the same show or a different show, I don't know. But Steve Tanner will be on the podcast next week. And so you can get to know him, and the residents of District 13 in Nampa can learn more about him. That's the goal of this podcast, is to help you make the best decisions and to learn about people and to show you who the squishes are and to show you who will actually be conservative and stay conservative. That's one of my goals. So next week is going to be a really good show, and we've got some other people coming up too that I think you'll like.
Yeah, I'm excited. We're going to get a lot more. We're going to get it rolling. But, a lot of this, guys, we need you guys to be sure to share, subscribe, do all the things, as they say. But definitely share this around. I mean, we're trying to do, again, an Idaho-centric podcast to give you guys more in-depth conversations on Idaho politics. And we'd love to continue growing. If you're interested in sponsoring, reach out to me, Greg, at keepidahofree.org. We'd love to have some more eyes on the podcast. And that's really all up to you guys, and whether you enjoy the content or not. Dustin and I can always come on here for an hour and just talk to each other.
We do that anyway.
Make fun of people.
Podcast it.
Might as well podcast it all. Yeah. So anyway, but that's all I've got, man. What else? Anything else?
No, I'm excited. I think Idaho has a really big opportunity in 2024 to really put the establishment to bed here in Idaho, and I hope they take it. But I promise you, the establishment is already gearing up for this race. I mean, I hear that Jim Woodward is going to try to challenge Scott Herndon. That's a thing that I'm hearing.
Boy.
I'm hearing that Jeff Agenbrod is going to come after Brian Lenny. I know the establishment wants Glenita out of there because she is in a very moderate district and she's a principal conservative. It's not a good fit. So please pay attention to this podcast. Please, if there's somebody that you want us to have on, or if there's something you want to know about here in Idaho, we'll get it for you, because we want to make sure that you have the resources you need to be educated and informed. And with that, I'll let Greg take it away.
All right, guys. Well, that's all we've got for this evening. Again, thank you for tuning in. I know it's the summertime, but we'd love to give you guys something to talk about and something to look forward to during the summer. You don't need any of that. There's no family vacations. All you need is the Freedom Bros, and we got you. So
didn't we miss last week kind of because of vacation?
Hey, we don't talk about that right now.
Whoops.
All right. So with that, we haven't been doing this, but I think we're gonna roll our
intro, our stinger.
We're a stinger. I didn't want to call it the intro because I'm going to do it for an outro too. We're going to roll the stinger at the beginning and the end, just because
it identifies as both. It's okay. It's okay.
That's right.
So
we'll do that, and then we're out of here. So thank you guys. God bless.